All right, let's talk about CSS modules. A CSS module is a CSS file that is scoped to a page or a component. It's a way to prevent styles from clashing or overriding each other. If you have been working with CSS for a while, you know that if you have the same class defined in two different places in two different style sheets, these classes can override each other depending on how we import these style sheet files. CSS modules aim to solve that problem. Let's see how they work. So here in the components folder, we have a component called product card. Now let's say we want to create some styles for this component. So here we add a new file. We can call this file anything, but it's better to call it the same as the component. So product card. What matters is that the extension has to be .module.css. Okay. Now in this file or in this CSS module, we can define classes that are scoped to our product card component. So let's define a class called card. And of course, we can define this class somewhere else without worrying that these classes would clash. Okay. So here we can apply a padding of 1 rem and a border of 1 pixel solid CCC. Now we go back to our component and import this style sheet. So we type import styles from current folder product card.module.css. The name we assign here doesn't matter, but typically we go with styles, and this will be a JavaScript object. So the classes that we define in this CSS module will end up being properties of that object. So here, if we type styles, we should see those properties, but I don't know why IntelliSense is not currently working for me, so I apologize for that. So here we should see the classes we have defined like card and so on. And that means in CSS modules, we cannot use hyphens when naming these classes like card container, because this is not a valid name for a JavaScript property. So in these files, always use the camel case notation. So we remove the hyphen and make the first letter of the second word uppercase. Okay. Now let's just simplify things. We go with card. Back to our component. So we have this object. Now on this div, we set class name to, we use our curly braces and set it to styles.card. Now back to the browser. Here on the home page, you can see the style applied to our card. But let me show you something interesting. Let's right click here and inspect this in Chrome DevTools. Here's our div. Look at the class name. This is not the class that we created, right? This is auto-generated. So what is happening here is that this project uses a tool called PostCSS for transforming our CSS class names. So back to our project. Here in the root folder, we have a file called postcss.config.js. In this file, currently we have two plugins. One is Tailwind, the other is Auto Prefixer. Now, for the most part, we don't have to touch this configuration file, but if you're an advanced PostCSS user, you know this is where you can provide your custom configuration. So when building our application, Next.js uses PostCSS to transform our class names and generate unique class names that don't clash. This is how CSS modules work. Now, one last thing before we finish this lesson. Currently, I've put the CSS file and the TypeScript file next to each other. If you don't like mixing up your CSS and TSX files, you can group them in folders. So here we can create a folder like product card. This is a container for our component. In this component, we can have a TSX file and a CSS file, okay? And of course, we can use the same technique with our pages. So we can use CSS modules to define styles that are local to a particular page.